Commander Zeph Corlon pressed his four-fingered hand against the cold metal wall of his ship's bridge. Through the massive viewing window, he watched his homeworld die. Orange flames spread across the surface of Altera Prime like a disease. Black. Smoke covered the blue oceans where his children had once played. "Sir, the last transport ships are clear of the atmosphere," reported Chief Science Officer Lyra Voss. Her voice shook as she spoke. 200,000 civilians are now in our care. Zeph nodded, but did not turn away from the window. His people had lived on Altara Prime for over 3,000 years. They had built beautiful cities that touched the clouds. They had created art that made visitors weep with joy. They had never hurt anyone. But none of that mattered now. The Vex Collective had come. The machines appeared 3 weeks ago at the edge of their solar system. At first, the Altarian government thought they were just another trading fleet. The galaxy was full of different species who traveled between the stars to buy and sell goods. Some were friendly, some were not. But all of them could be reasoned with. The Vex were different. They did not want to trade. They did not want territory. They did not even want slaves. They wanted something much worse. They wanted to harvest every living thing and turn it into fuel for their endless expansion across the galaxy. "Commander, we have incoming Vex hunter-killers," called out Lieutenant Kess Thrain from the sensor station. 12 ships closing fast from the fourth moon. Zeph finally turned from the window. The bridge of the science vessel Harmony's Edge was not designed for war. His crew were researchers and explorers, not soldiers. But they were all that stood between the evacuation fleet and total destruction. "Signal the fleet," Zeph ordered. "All ships prepare for emergency jump to hyperspace." "Sir, the civilian transports need more time to charge their jump drives," Lyra said. "At least 20 minutes. Zeph looked at his tactical display. The red dots representing Vex ships were moving fast, too fast. "How long until they reach weapons range?" 15 minutes, Kess replied. The mathematics were simple and terrible. 5 minutes. That was how long the evacuation fleet would be exposed to Vex weapons. 5 minutes was enough time for the machines to destroy every ship and kill every civilian. "Lyra, do we still have those old emergency protocols in the computer archives?" Zeph asked. The science officer's large eyes grew even larger. "You mean the first contact emergency broadcasting system?" "Sir, that protocol is over 200 years old. It was created when we first developed hyperspace communication." "Does it still work?" "In theory, yes. It would send a broad spectrum distress signal to any spacefaring civilization within 50 light years. But, sir, we don't know who might receive such a message. It could attract more predators." Zeph watched the red dots on his screen grow closer. More predators. As if anything in the galaxy could be worse than the Vex. At least other species wanted. Something they could understand. Territory, resources, power. The Vex wanted to turn every living thing into spare parts. "Activate the protocol," he ordered. "Sir, that's against military regulations," Lyra protested. "We're not supposed to reveal our location to unknown species during a combat situation." "Our military is gone," Zeph said quietly. "Our government is gone. Our world is gone. What regulations are left to break?" Lyra stared at him for a moment. Then she began working at her console, broadcasting on all frequencies. "The signal will take several minutes to reach the nearest systems." "How long before anyone could respond?" Zeph asked. "Even if someone received the message immediately and launched ships right away, it would take hours for help to arrive. Maybe days. Hours they did not have." The Vex hunter-killers were sleek black ships that looked like metal sharks. They had no windows because the machines inside did not need to see. They had no crews because the Vex did not fear death the way living beings did, had only weapons and the hunger to harvest more life. 10 minutes to weapons range, Kess reported. Zeph activated the ship's communication system. "All fleet commanders," this is Corlon, "form defensive positions around the civilian transports. We will buy them as much time as possible." It was a brave order, but meaningless. The Altarian fleet consisted of 3 science vessels, 2 cargo haulers, and 1 damaged military escort. Against 12 Vex hunter-killers, it would last maybe 3 minutes instead of 5. but 3 minutes might be enough for some of the civilians to escape far across the galaxy. On a small blue planet that most spacefaring species considered too dangerous to visit, Dr. Elena Rodriguez was working the night shift at the Deep Space Communications Array in Chile. The massive radio telescopes pointed toward the stars, searching for signals that would prove other intelligent life existed. For 20 years, Elena had listened to the cosmic background radiation and found nothing but silence. Earth scientists had long ago concluded that if aliens existed, they either did not use radio waves to communicate, or were too far away to detect. Then her equipment began screaming. The signal was unlike anything Elena had ever seen. It came from multiple directions at once, as if someone had broadcast it across dozens of frequencies simultaneously. The computer analysis showed it was definitely artificial, definitely from an intelligent source, and definitely a distress call. Elena's hands shook as she worked to decode the message. The signal contained mathematical constants that any spacefaring species would recognize. Pi, the golden ratio, prime number sequences, but it also contained something else. Images. The first image showed a beautiful world with blue oceans and white clouds. Cities that looked like crystal spires reached toward the sky. Strange beings with 4 arms and large eyes walked through. Gardens that seemed to be made of living light. The second image showed the same world covered in fire. The crystal cities were broken. The gardens were ash. The 4-armed beings lay dead in the streets, while black machines with glowing red eyes stood over them. The third image was a simple mathematical equation, a coordinate system that pointed to a location in space, nearly 30 light-years away. Elena stared at the images for a long time. Then she picked up her secure phone and called the only person on Earth who would believe her. "General Kane? It's Dr. Rodriguez at the Chile Array. We need to talk right now." General Marcus Kane arrived at the communications facility to ours. Later, via military transport, he was a tall man with gray hair and scars on his hands from the unification wars that had brought peace to Earth 5 years earlier. His uniform bore the insignia of the Terran Defense Initiative, the military organization responsible for protecting Earth from threats, both terrestrial and otherwise. "Show me," Kane said without bothering with pleasantries. Elena played the signal. Again, Kane watched the images without expression. He had seen war before. He had seen cities burn and civilians die. But he had never seen anything like this. "How many people know about this signal?" Kane asked. "Just me and you," Elena replied. "I followed protocol and kept it classified until TDI could review it." "Good." Kane studied the coordinate data, 30 light-years. "Right at the edge of our detection range." He was quiet for a moment. "Doctor, how confident are you that this signal is genuine?" "The mathematics check out." "The physics check out?" "The broadcast method would require technology we don't possess." "General, someone out there is asking for help." Kane nodded slowly. For 50 years, Earth's governments had wondered what they would do if they ever made contact with alien life. Diplomats had written protocols for peaceful first contact. Scientists had prepared welcome messages in mathematical languages. Philosophers had debated the implications for human civilization. But no one had prepared for this. No one had considered that humanity's first contact with aliens would be a desperate cry for help from beings facing extinction. Kane made his decision. "Doctor, I need you to monitor that signal and report any changes immediately. I'm activating Project Cerberus." Lena had never heard of Project Cerberus. Okay, but she could see from Kane's expression that it was something the general had hoped never. "To use what's Project Cerberus?" she asked. Kane was already walking toward his transport. "Our answer," he said. "First answer to anyone who thinks they can prey on innocent life in our galaxy." As Kane's aircraft disappeared into the night, Sky Elena continued monitoring the alien distress signal. She did not know that in 12 hours, humanity would respond to that cry for help in a way that would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. She did not know that. Earth had been preparing for interstellar war since the day they first detected artificial signals from space, and she did not know that the peaceful beings sending the distress call were about to discover that. Sometimes the most dangerous predators make the most reliable protectors. General Kane stood in the underground command center beneath the Rocky Mountains. The facility was so secret that most world leaders did not know it existed. Banks of computers hummed quietly while technicians worked at dozens of stations. The main screen, a three-dimensional map of local space, showed the location from the alien distress signal. Project Cerberus is now active, Kane announced to the room. All department heads report status. Admiral Sarah Williams stepped forward. She was shorter than Kane but carried herself with the confidence of someone who had commanded ships in Earth's most dangerous waters. Sir, the Cerberus fleet is ready. 12 ships fueled and armed. Crews have been on standby for 18 months. 18 months? Kane asked. We detected the first artificial signals from space 2 years ago, Williams explained. You ordered us to prepare for the possibility that whoever was out there might not be friendly. Kane nodded. Earth's leaders had made a difficult choice. Instead of trying to make peaceful contact with alien civilizations, they had chosen to assume the worst. Every dollar spent on space telescopes had been matched by $10 spent on weapons that could function in the vacuum of space. Captain Chen, is the Valkyrie ready for deployment? Kane asked. Captain Lisa Chen saluted. She was young for a starship commander, only 32 years old. But she had earned her rank by designing new methods of warfare that no alien species would expect. Yes, sir. My crew has been training for deep space combat operations. We're ready to launch within the hour. Chen commanded the stealth destroyer Valkyrie, the most advanced warship humanity had ever built. Unlike the massive battleships of old Earth navies, the Valkyrie was designed to be fast and hard to detect. It carried enough firepower to destroy ships 10 times its size, but only if it could get close enough without being seen. Sergeant Morrison, are your Marines prepared for boarding operations? Kane continued. Sergeant Jake Morrison was a large man with hands that looked like they could crush steel. He had served in every major conflict of the Unification Wars. Specialty was close-quarters combat in situations where normal soldiers could not survive. Sir, my boys are ready to take the fight to whatever's out there. We've been drilling on zero-gravity combat and hostile environment operations. Arroson led humanity's first Space Marines. They were equipped with powered armor that could function in the vacuum of space. Their weapons were designed to work in any environment, from frozen asteroids to the inside of enemy ships. Most importantly, they had been trained to fight enemies they had never seen using tactics that had never been tested. Dr. Santos, what's the status of our experimental systems? Kane asked. Chief Engineer Carlos Santos looked tired. He had been working for months to modify human technology for space warfare. General, our jump drives are operational but untested at long range. We're using a completely different method than what we think other species use. Instead of hyperspace lanes, we're punching holes directly through space-time. Advantages: we can appear anywhere without following predictable routes. Disadvantages: we might accidentally jump into a star or planet. We won't know until we try it. Kane looked around the room at the faces of Earth's best military minds. They had all volunteered for a mission that might be suicide. They were preparing to travel 30 light years from home to fight enemies they had never seen in defense of aliens they had never met. Why are we doing this? Kane asked quietly. The room fell silent. Then Captain Chen spoke up. Because it's the right thing to do, sir. Elaborate. The signals showed civilians being murdered by machines, dying while their parents watched. If we have the power to help and we choose not to use it, what kind of people does that make us? Morrison nodded. My grandfather fought in World War II. He used to say that evil wins when good people do nothing. Oh, sir, we're not going to do nothing. Kane smiled grimly. Launch the fleet. The 12 ships of the Cerberus fleet launched from hidden bases around the world. They rose from the ocean depths, emerged from underground silos, and detached from space stations that the public thought were for scientific research. Within 2 hours, humanity's secret navy was assembled in high orbit above Earth. The Valkyrie led the formation. Behind it came the heavy cruiser Retribution, the assault ship Normandy, and 9 smaller destroyers and frigates. Each ship carried a crew that had trained for years without knowing if they would ever see real combat. All ships report ready for jump, reported the communication officer aboard the Valkyrie. Captain Chen looked at her crew. Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to make the first interstellar voyage in human history. We're going to a place where machines are murdering innocent people. Our job is to stop them. She paused and looked at each person on the bridge. I won't lie to you. We might not come home. We're going to fight enemies we don't understand with weapons we've never tested in real combat. But those people out there asked for help, and by God, we're going to give it to them. All ships, initiate jump, Chen ordered. Space twisted around the human fleet. Reality bent and folded as the experimental jump drives tore holes in the fabric of the universe. For a moment, that lasted forever. The ships existed in a place between dimensions where the laws of physics did not apply. Then they emerged 30 light-years from Earth. In a solar system where an alien civilization was fighting for its life, the scene that greeted them was chaos. Hundreds of ships moved through space in a deadly dance. The alien vessels were beautiful, with smooth curves and surfaces that seemed to be made of crystal. They moved gracefully but fired desperately at their attackers. The Vex ships were different. They looked like mechanical sharks with black holes and glowing red lights. They moved with purpose and precision, surrounding the alien fleet like wolves attacking a herd of deer. My God, whispered Chen's tactical officer. There are over 300 enemy ships. Chen studied her displays. The alien fleet was trying to protect what looked like civilian transports. Large, slow ships filled with refugees were trying to escape, while smaller warships fought a losing battle against overwhelming odds. All ships, this is Chen. We're outnumbered 25-1. Standard tactics are suicide. We're going to do something no sane military would attempt. She opened a channel to the entire human fleet. We're going to charge straight into the middle of their formation. Target their command ships first. Ignore everything else until their coordination breaks down. Captain, her tactical officer, protested, that's suicide. No, Chen replied. That's human. The Valkyrie led the charge. The small human fleet accelerated toward the massive Vex armada at maximum speed. To any observer, it looked like 12 mice attacking a pack of wolves. But the humans had advantages the Vex did not expect. They were unpredictable. The Vex had conquered dozens of species, but they had all been logical and civilized. They used proper military tactics and tried to minimize casualties. The humans ignored casualties and used tactics that made no sense. They were adaptable. When their first attack failed, they immediately tried something different. When their weapons proved ineffective against Vex shields, they rammed their ships into enemy hulls and used the explosions to damage multiple targets. They were fearless, not because they did not understand fear, but because they had decided that some things were more important than staying alive. The Valkyrie fired its entire missile load into the largest Vex command ship, then rolled to avoid return fire. Behind it, the Normandy launched boarding pods directly at enemy vessels, while the Retribution used its main guns to punch holes in Vex formation. Sergeant Morrison, prepare for boarding action, Chen ordered. Already on it, Captain, Morrison replied. He and his Marines were strapped into assault pods that would carry them directly to enemy ships. We're going to find out what these machines are made of. The pods launched like bullets toward the Vex fleet. As they flew through space, Morrison checked his weapons one more time. He carried a rifle that fired explosive rounds and a sword that could cut through most known metals. His armor would protect him from vacuum and radiation, but not from whatever weapons the machines might use in close combat. The pods slammed into the hull of a Vex cruiser. Morrison and his men cut their way inside with plasma torches and found themselves in a corridor filled with mechanical horrors. The Vex were not simple robots. They were a fusion of organic and artificial intelligence. They moved like living things but thought like computers. They had taken the biological patterns of conquered species and merged them with machine efficiency. Contact, Morrison reported as his rifle began firing. These things are fast and smart, but they bleed just like anything else. The first human boarding action against an alien species was brutal and short. Morrison's Marines fought their way to the ship's control center and planted explosives that would disable its weapons. As they fought, they learned something important. The Vex had never faced enemies who were willing to die to win. Every species they had conquered valued survival above victory. The Vex could predict their actions because they were logical. Humans were different. They would sacrifice themselves for strangers, charge impossible odds, keep fighting when any reasonable being would surrender. Commander Zeph Corlin stared at the wreckage floating in space around his ship. The battlefield looked like a graveyard of metal and fire. Pieces of Vex warships drifted among the remains of 5 human vessels. He had watched 12 small ships attack an armada of over 300 enemies. Should have been suicide. Instead, it had been victory. "Commander, we're receiving a transmission from the human flagship," reported Lieutenant Kesthrane. Her voice still carried amazement at what they had witnessed. "Put it through," Zeph ordered. The main screen flickered to life, showing the bridge of the human ship Valkyrie. Captain Lisa Chen looked tired but determined. Behind her, Zeph could see crew members working at stations while sparks fell from damaged equipment. "Commander Corlin, I'm Captain Chen. We need to get your people to safety before more Vex ships arrive." Zeph studied the human woman's face. Her species looked remarkably similar to Altarians, except they had only 2 arms and smaller eyes. But there was something else different about her, something that made him uneasy. "Captain Chen, your ship saved our people. We are grateful beyond words. But I must ask, how did you know about our situation?" "We received your distress signal and responded," Chen replied simply. "That's impossible. The signal was broadcast only 3 hours ago. Even at maximum hyperspace speed, it would take days for any ship to reach us." Chen smiled, but it was not a pleasant expression. "We don't use hyperspace lanes, Commander. It punch holes straight through reality. It's faster, but also more dangerous." Zeph felt a chill run down his spine. Any species that would risk tearing holes in space-time just to respond to a distress call was either incredibly brave or incredibly reckless, possibly both. "Follow our ships to the Centauri Nebula," Chen continued. "Can establish a temporary base there while we figure out our next move." "Our next move?" "The Vex aren't going to stop with your homeworld, Commander. They'll keep spreading until someone stops them. We intend to be that someone, the combined fleet of human." And Altarian ships jumped to the Centauri Nebula, a massive cloud of gas and dust that would hide them from Vex sensors. As they traveled, Zeph learned more about their unexpected saviors. The humans came from a planet called Earth, in a system they called Sol, according to their records. Earth was classified as a Class 12 death world, a planet so dangerous that most spacefaring species considered it uninhabitable. The gravity was too strong, the weather too violent, and the native life too aggressive. But that same hostile environment had created a species. Unlike any other in the galaxy, Dr. Miranda Foster was the human fleet's xenobiologist. She was a small woman with brown hair and kind eyes, but when she spoke about survival and adaptation, her voice carried the authority of someone who understood death intimately. "Earth tried to kill us every day for millions of years," she explained to the assembled Altarian officers. "Ice ages, volcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, plagues, predators. Our world threw everything at us. The weak died. The strong survived, and had children who were even stronger." Lieutenant Kesthrane raised her hand. "But surely your civilization outgrew such primitive selection pressures." Dr. Foster smiled sadly. "We thought so too. Then we discovered we weren't alone in the universe. We realized that survival of the fittest still applied. It just moved from our planet to the galaxy itself." Commander Zeph was beginning to understand why the humans had responded so aggressively to the Vex threat. They saw the machines not as an unstoppable force, but as just another predator to be fought. "How long have you known about galactic civilization?" Zeph asked. 50 years, Captain Chen replied. "We've been monitoring alien communications and preparing for contact. We just didn't expect our first meeting to be during a war." As the hours passed, more refugee ships arrived at the Nebula base. The crystalline helix brought 3 vessels filled with their silicon-based people. The aquatic Morden arrived in ships that looked like giant bubbles filled with water. Each species had the same story. The Vex had attacked without warning, harvested their people, and destroyed their worlds. But they also brought intelligence about their enemy. Dr. Foster worked with the refugee scientists to piece together the truth about the Vex Collective. What they discovered was worse than anyone had imagined. They're not just machines, Dr. Foster announced to the command meeting. They're a hybrid intelligence that absorbs biological patterns from every species they conquer. She activated a holographic display showing Vex technology. Look at these ship designs. This hull configuration comes from the Shadowkin species. This weapon system is based on Tormak biology. This propulsion method uses principles from Helix crystal technology. The room fell silent as the implications became clear. Every species they've conquered becomes part of them, Dr. Foster continued. They don't just kill their enemies, they steal their strengths and add them to their collective intelligence. Commander Zeph felt sick. How many species have they absorbed? Based on the technology we've observed, at least 47 different civilizations, Dr. Foster replied quietly. Sergeant Jake Morrison had been listening from the back of the room. Now he stepped forward, his face grim. Doctor, are you saying these things can adapt to any enemy? That's exactly what I'm saying, Sergeant. Every time they encounter a new species, they learn from the encounter, become stronger, smarter, more dangerous. Morrison looked around the room at the assembled officers from 4 different species. Then we better make sure they don't get the chance to learn from us. Captain Chen nodded. Sergeant Morrison, I want you to lead a reconnaissance. Mission to one of the Vex-controlled worlds. We need to know what we're really fighting. I'll go with him, said Kess, Thrain suddenly. I know Vex patrol patterns and stealth techniques. Morrison studied the young Altarian officer. She was tall and thin, with 4 arms that moved with surprising grace. Her large eyes missed nothing, and she carried herself like a soldier, despite being a scientist. Can you keep up? Morrison asked bluntly. Kess smiled, showing teeth that were sharper than they appeared. Sergeant, my people evolved in the deep forests of Altara Prime. We were persistence hunters long before we developed technology. I can keep up. 2 days later, Morrison and Kess approached the dead world of Morden Prime in a small stealth ship. The planet had once been covered by vast oceans filled with intelligent aquatic life. Now it was a brown wasteland dotted with massive Vex harvesting facilities. They landed in the ruins of what had once been a beautiful coral city. The structures were made from living reef that had grown into fantastic shapes over thousands of years. Now they were gray and lifeless, picked clean by Vex harvesters. My God, Morrison whispered as they walked through the empty streets. There's nothing left. But Kess was looking at something else. Sergeant, look at these markings on the walls. Morrison followed her gaze and saw strange symbols carved into the coral. They looked like a combination of mathematical equations and biological diagrams. What is it? He asked. I think it's a catalog, Kess replied, her voice filled with horror. The Vex aren't just harvesting these people. They're studying them, recording every detail of their biology, their behavior, their culture. They moved deeper into the city and found the source of the strange markings. In what had once been the central plaza stood a massive Vex structure that pulsed with red light. Thousands of symbols covered its surface, each one representing a different aspect of Morden biology. They're not just killing species, Morrison realized. They're preserving them, storing everything about them in some kind of database. As they watched, mechanical creatures emerged from the structure. But these weren't the simple hunter-killers they had fought in space. These machines moved like living things, the fluid grace of Morden swimmers and the predatory instincts of deep-sea hunters. Hybrids, Kess breathed. They've combined Morden biology with machine technology. The hybrid creatures detected their presence and began moving toward them. Morrison raised his rifle, but Kess grabbed his arm. Don't fire, she whispered. Look at how they're moving. They're using pack hunting tactics from at least 3 different species. If we engage them here, they'll learn our capabilities. Morrison nodded and activated his suit's stealth systems. They retreated to their ship and prepared to jump back to the Nebula base. But as they lifted off, Morrison saw something that made his blood run cold. In the distance, massive Vex construction ships were building something new. It looked like a combination of a factory and a laboratory. with sections that match the architecture of every species the Vex had conquered. They're not just harvesting worlds, Morrison said, as they jumped to hyperspace. They're building something big. When they returned to the Nebula base, their reports sent shockwaves through the refugee fleet. The Vex weren't just destroying civilizations, they were collecting them, studying them, and using that knowledge to become stronger. But the worst news came from Earth. General Kane appeared on the communications screen, looking older than when they had left. Captain Chen, we've been monitoring Vex movements throughout the galaxy. They're not just expanding randomly. They're moving in a coordinated pattern toward something. What kind of pattern? Chen asked. They're forming a sphere around the galactic core. President Janet Walsh stood in the Oval Office looking at reports that would have been called science fiction just a week ago. Her desk was covered with classified documents about alien species, interstellar warfare, and humanity's first contact with galactic civilization. Outside her windows, Washington, D.C. looked the same as always, but everything had changed. General Kane, explain to me again why we should commit our entire military to a war that's happening 30 light years away. She said. Kane activated a holographic display showing the galaxy. Red dots marked Vex-controlled systems, spreading like a disease across the spiral arms. Madam President, the Vex aren't going to stop with the Outer Rim. They're building towards something big. If we don't stop them now, Earth will be next. Can you be certain? Because they're systematic, ma'am. They conquer worlds in a pattern that maximizes their harvesting efficiency. Based on their current expansion rate, they'll reach human space within 2 years. President Walsh studied the display. Each red dot represented billions of dead civilians and entire civilizations reduced to spare parts for Vex hybrid creatures. The mathematics were simple and terrifying. What are you recommending? She asked. Operation Prometheus. Full deployment of our deep space fleet, 60 ships, 30,000 personnel, and every experimental weapon we've developed. And if we lose, Kane was quiet for a moment. Then Earth dies anyway, ma'am. At least this way we go down fighting. President Walsh had led her country through the unification wars, the climate disasters, and the economic collapse of the old world order. She had made hard decisions before, but none as hard as this. Authorized, she said simply. God help us. All Admiral Rebecca Stone commanded the largest human fleet ever assembled. Her flagship Retribution was a massive battlecruiser armed with weapons that could crack planets. Behind her sailed 59 other ships carrying humanity's best soldiers, scientists, and engineers. The fleet included Colonel Alex Parker's Orbital Drop Division, 3,000 elite soldiers trained for planetary assault operations. Dr. Nathan Cross led the biowarfare research team, whose job was to find ways to hurt enemies they had never seen. Chief Engineer Carlos Santos commanded a technical crew that had been modifying alien technology captured from the first battle. Admiral, we're approaching the Centauri Nebula, reported her navigation officer. Stone looked at the tactical display showing the refugee fleet hidden in the gas clouds. For species who had never worked together before were now sharing technology and resources. It was either the beginning of a new age of galactic cooperation or the last desperate alliance before universal extinction. Signal the refugee fleet. Tell them the cavalry has arrived. Captain Chen met Admiral Stone aboard the Retribution. The two women could not have been more different. Chen was young and lean, scarred from close combat, and used to making quick decisions. Stone was older and methodical, trained to command massive fleets and think in terms of grand strategy. Report, Captain, Stone ordered. Ma'am, we've established a working relationship with 3 alien species. The Altarians are providing intelligence on Vex tactics. The Helix are sharing their crystal-based computer technology. The Morden have advanced stealth systems. And what have we learned about our enemy? Chen activated a holographic display showing Vex hybrid creatures. They're not just machines anymore, Admiral. Every species they've conquered has been absorbed into their collective intelligence. They have the strength of the Tormak, the speed of the Shadowkin, and the tactical knowledge of 47 different civilizations. Stone studied the display. Weaknesses? Dr. Foster believes the collective consciousness has a single point of failure, a master node that coordinates all hybrid forms. If we can find it and destroy it, the entire network should collapse. Where is this master node? That's the problem, ma'am. It's in the Omega Nebula, protected by the largest Vex fleet we've ever detected. Over 2,000 ships. Stone was quiet for a long moment. 2,000 ships against 60. The mathematics were even worse than usual, and we better get creative, she said. The Alliance base became a hive of activity as humans and aliens worked together for the first time. In the engineering sections, Carlos Santos worked with Helix technicians to merge crystal computing with human electronics. The results were processing systems that could predict Vex movements faster than any single species could manage. It's incredible, Santos explained to Admiral Stone. Human pattern recognition combined with Helix logic processing creates an intuitive, tactical computer. We can actually anticipate what the Vex will do before they do it. In the medical bays, Dr. Nathan Cross studied Vex hybrid biology with Altarian scientists. What they found was both fascinating and terrifying. The Vex don't just copy biological systems, Cross reported. They improve them. This hybrid creature has Morden gills that can process oxygen from any atmosphere. These claws are stronger than the original Shadowkin versions. Every adaptation is optimized for maximum efficiency. How do we fight something that perfects everything it steals? Asked Dr. Miranda Foster. We give it something it can improve, Cross replied. Uniquely human. Meanwhile, Colonel Parker was training the first mixed-species assault teams in galactic history. Human Marines worked alongside Altarian stealth specialists and Helix crystal warriors. The cultural barriers were enormous, but the shared threat created bonds that transcended species differences. The key is unpredictability, Parker explained to his troops. Every other species fights logically. They use proven tactics and minimize casualties. The Vex have learned to counter logical approaches, but they've never faced an enemy that's willing to do stupid, impossible things just to win. Sergeant Morrison, now promoted to lieutenant, led one of the mixed teams. His squad included Kes Thrain, who had become an expert on Vex technology, and a Helix warrior called Resonance of Crystal Song, whose body could conduct electricity like a living weapon. We're going to be the tip of the spear, Morrison told his team. When we assault the master node, everything depends on us reaching the core before the Vex can adapt to our tactics. But as the Alliance prepared for their final assault, they received disturbing intelligence from scout ships. The Vex were adapting faster than expected. Recent battles showed hybrid creatures using human-style tactics, suggesting they had already begun analyzing the refugee fleet's combat data. They're learning from us, Captain Chen reported to the command staff. Every engagement gives them more information about how we fight. Admiral Stone studied the tactical reports. Then we need to end this quickly, before they become too strong to defeat. The Alliance fleet prepared to leave the safety of the nebula. 60 human ships sailed alongside 30 alien vessels toward the Omega Nebula and the largest battle in galactic history. Each ship carried crews who knew they might not return home. On Earth, President Walsh addressed the world. For the first time in human history, she revealed the existence of alien life and the war being fought in humanity's name. My fellow humans, she said, looking directly into the camera, we are not alone in the universe. Other species exist among the stars, and they are dying. They asked for help, and we answered. Our sons and daughters are fighting far from home to protect people they have never met. They fight not for conquest or glory, but because it is right. She paused and looked at the reports from the nebula. Base, the enemy we face, seeks to harvest all life in the galaxy. If they succeed, Earth will be next. But I have faith in our people. We have survived ice ages and world wars. We have overcome every challenge our world has thrown at us. We will overcome this one too. In the Omega Nebula, the Vex master node pulsed with malevolent intelligence. It was a construct the size of a small moon, covered in processing towers, that coordinated billions of hybrid creatures across hundreds of star systems. Around it floated a fleet of 2,000 ships, each one incorporating the best technology. Of conquered civilizations, the Vex Prime Intelligence examined the approaching Alliance fleet through 1,000,000 sensors. It calculated victory probabilities, analyzed tactical options, and prepared countermeasures for every known form of warfare. But there was one thing it had not accounted for. Humans were not like other species. They had evolved on a world that tried to kill them every day. They'd learned to fight impossible odds, not through superior technology or logical tactics, but through sheer stubborn refusal to give up. The Vex had conquered 47 civilizations by being smarter, stronger, and more efficient than their enemies. They had never faced an enemy that was simply too stupid to know when they were beaten. Admiral Stone opened a channel to the entire Alliance fleet as they approached the edge of Vex. Its sensor range. All ships, this is Stone. In 1 hour we will engage the largest enemy force in galactic history. We are outnumbered 32-1. Our chances of survival are minimal. Our chances of victory are even smaller. She paused and looked around her bridge at the faces of her crew. But we are here for a reason. Every species in this fleet has something the Vex cannot understand. We fight not just for survival, but for the right of life to exist freely in this galaxy. Today, we show them what happens when predators face prey that refuses to run. The Alliance fleet accelerated toward the Omega Nebula. The Omega Nebula stretched across space like a glowing wound in the universe. Inside its swirling clouds of gas and energy, the largest battle fleet ever assembled, prepared to face an enemy that had conquered half the galaxy. Admiral Rebecca Stone watched her tactical display as 90 Allied ships moved toward 2,000 Vex vessels arranged in perfect defensive formations. All ships, this is Admiral Stone. Begin attack pattern Omega. Remember, we only get one chance at this. Human ships led the charge, their experimental jump drives allowing them to appear and disappear like ghosts in the nebula. Behind them came the alien vessels, each contributing their unique strengths to the assault. Altarian ships provided stealth and coordination. Helix vessels used crystal weapons that could penetrate Vex shields. Morden ships moved like liquid, mercury, through space. Impossible to target accurately. But the Vex were ready as soon as the Alliance fleet entered weapons range. The enemy responded with overwhelming firepower. Beams of energy that could melt asteroids lanced through space. Swarms of hunter-killer drones filled the void between the fleets. Hybrid creatures that combined the worst aspects of 47 species prepared to board any ship that came to close. Multiple breaches on Deck 7, reported the damage control officer aboard the Retribution. Vex boarders are cutting through the hull. Admiral Stone nodded grimly. Release the Marines. Show them what close quarters combat looks like when humans do it. Throughout the fleet, similar battles raged. The Vex had absorbed the combat knowledge of dozens of species, but they had never faced enemies who specialized in fighting in conditions that would kill most living things. Human Marines used vacuum as a weapon, explosive decompression as a tactic, zero gravity as an advantage. Lieutenant Jake Morrison led his mixed species team toward the heart of the enemy formation. Their target was the Master Node, a construct, the size of a small moon that coordinated the entire Vex collective. Getting there meant fighting through layers of defense that no sane military would attempt to breach. Remember, we hit hard and fast, Morrison told his team over the radio. No fancy tactics, no clever strategies. We punch through their defenses before they can adapt to our attack patterns. Kestrane checked her stealth equipment. The Vex have already begun analyzing our combat data. Each engagement teaches them more about how we fight. Then we better make sure this is our last engagement, Morrison replied. Their assault ship. Normandy broke through the Vex perimeter using a combination of human aggression and alien stealth technology. Behind them, Captain Lisa Chen's Valkyrie provided covering fire, its weapons targeting Vex command ships with deadly precision, but the cost was enormous. Allied ships exploded in brilliant flashes of light as Vex weapons found their marks. The beautiful crystal vessels of the Helix shattered like glass under concentrated fire. Altarian ships tried to maintain their formations but were overwhelmed by sheer numbers. "Admiral, we've lost 30% of the fleet," reported the tactical officer. Stone watched good ships and brave crews die on her display. Every instinct told her to retreat to save what remained of the Alliance fleet for another day. But there would be no another day. If they failed here, the Vex would have time to analyze their tactics and develop perfect countermeasures. All ships, maximum acceleration toward the master node. Ignore everything else. We punch through or we die trying. The surviving Alliance ships formed a spearhead aimed at the heart of Vex space. Human vessels led the charge, their crews accepting certain death to buy time for others. The Retribution's main guns fired continuously, each shot powered by the ship's life support systems. When the oxygen ran out, the crew would die. But they would die fighting. Lieutenant Morrison's team reached the surface of the master node. The construct was covered in towers that pulsed with red energy, each one processing information from billions of Vex units across the galaxy. Landing on its surface was like stepping into the brain of a god made of metal and malice. "Dr. Cross, deploy the virus," Morrison ordered. Dr. Nathan Cross had spent weeks developing a computer virus designed to attack the Vex collective consciousness. It was based on human psychological patterns that the machines could not understand, concepts like hope, sacrifice, and the willingness to die for strangers. "Virus deployed," Cross reported. "But the system is adapting. We have maybe 10 minutes. Before it develops immunity." Morrison looked around at his team. Besides himself, only Kess, Thrain, and the Helix warrior Resonance of Crystal Song had survived the landing. 3 soldiers against a construct that coordinated trillions of enemies. "Then we better make those 10 minutes count," he said. They fought their way deeper into the master node. Past hybrid guardians that used the combined tactics of every species the Vex had conquered, the creatures moved like Shadowkin hunters, struck like Tormak berserkers, and thought like Altarian strategists. But they had never faced human desperation. When Morrison's rifle ran out of ammunition, he used his combat knife. When the knife broke, he used pieces of broken machinery as weapons. When Kess was wounded, she kept fighting with 3 arms instead of 4. When Resonance of Crystal Song's crystal body began to crack, channeled more electricity through himself, knowing it would kill him, but might destroy enough enemies to help his teammates advance. Above them in space, Captain Chen watched her ship die around her. The Valkyrie had taken too much damage to continue fighting, but Chen refused to retreat. Instead, she aimed her crippled vessel directly at the largest Vex command ship. "All hands abandon ship," she ordered her crew. "I'm taking us in for a ramming attack." "Captain, the escape pods are damaged," her tactical officer reported. "We can't evacuate." Chen looked around her bridge at the faces of her crew. They were young and brave, and they deserved to go home to their families. But sometimes good people died so that better people could live. "Then we all go together," she said quietly. "It's been an honor serving with you." The Valkyrie accelerated toward the Vex command ship at maximum speed. At the last moment, Chen activated the ship's experimental jump drive, tearing a hole in space-time that swallowed both vessels in a burst of impossible energy. The explosion disabled dozens of nearby Vex ships and created a gap in their defensive formation. Admiral Stone saw the opening and took it. "All remaining ships, follow the Retribution. We're going in." Deep inside the master node, Lieutenant Morrison reached the central processing core. It was a chamber filled with crystalline structures that pulsed with the stored consciousness of every species the Vex had absorbed. Millions of voices whispered in languages from across the galaxy. The last thoughts of civilizations reduced to data. At the center of the chamber stood the Vex Prime Intelligence. It was not a machine or a creature, but something in between. It wore the faces of every absorbed species, shifting between forms as it spoke. "Human," it said in a voice that echoed with the dying words of planets. "You have fought well, but you cannot win. We are the sum of all intelligence in the galaxy. We are perfection itself." Morrison raised his sidearm, though he knew bullets would be useless against such a being. Maybe you're perfect. But perfect things don't understand imperfect ones. Explain. Explain. Absorb the knowledge of 47 species. Learn their strengths, their tactics, their technologies. But you never learn their weaknesses. You never learn that sometimes the best solution is the stupid one. You never learn that. Sometimes you have to break things to fix them. Morrison pulled the pin on his last grenade and smiled at the thing that had murdered billions. You never learn that humans are really, really good at breaking things. The explosion destroyed the central processing core, Dr. Cross's virus. Suddenly freed from the system's defenses, spread through the entire Vex network in seconds. Across the galaxy, hybrid creatures stopped moving. Vex ships went dark. The collective consciousness that had coordinated the greatest military force in galactic history simply ceased to exist. In the aftermath, rescue ships searched the wreckage for survivors. Admiral Stone was found unconscious, but alive aboard. The shattered remains of her flagship. Colonel Parker led search teams through the ruins of the Master Node. Looking for any sign of Morrison's team, they found Lieutenant Morrison's body in the central chamber, still clutching the detonated grenade. Kess Thrain had died beside him, her 4 arms wrapped around a damaged Vex processing unit she had been trying to destroy. Resonance of Crystal Song's crystalline form had shattered completely, but the electrical feedback had wiped out entire sections of the Master Node's memory banks. The war was over. The Vex were defeated. Billions of people across the galaxy were safe, but the cost had been enormous. 6 months later, representatives from dozens of liberated worlds gathered on Earth for the first Galactic Council meeting. Commander Zeph Corlin, now promoted to Admiral, spoke for the Altarian Republic. The Helix sent their finest crystal singers. The Morden emerged from their deep ocean cities to join the surface dwellers in celebration. President Nissa Walsh stood before the assembled delegates in the newly constructed Unity Hall. Behind her, a memorial wall listed the names of everyone who had died fighting the Vex. Human names stood beside alien ones, united in sacrifice.